So, hi guys, hope you're well. It is Sunday evening, and tonight's session we're going to be looking at some case studies as properties that I've recently acquired with no or very little money. So, I want to thank you for your time this evening. I appreciate it's Sunday evening, lots of things that you can be doing, but you've decided to spend the time with me, and for that, I thank you. Before we get started, I always like to kind of know who we've got on the call. So if you wouldn't mind, just in the Q&A box, just let me know who you are. And if we kind of break it down to one, two, or three, number one, you're completely new to property. Number two, you've already got properties and you're looking for a new strategy. Or number three, you're looking to scale up. If you can, just tell me a little bit about yourself so that I can tailor this session according to who we got on the call. So if you wouldn't mind doing that, that would be much appreciated. So I want to say hi to Tabita. We've got Rizwan. We've got Cole. We've got quite a few of you on the call, and it'd be good if you've got any questions, stick them up during the session as well. So let's get straight into it. So first of all, who is Arsh Ellahi? Now, I appreciate lots of people out there in the property space, lots of people talking about what they're doing and etc. One thing that I pride myself on first and foremost is that I'm a property investor. I've been investing in property for best part of 24 years full time, but I've been involved in property the best part of 40 years. So there's a bit of a story behind that. I'm going to tell you about that shortly. So I've got quite a large property portfolio myself. So I do, as I say, so I walk the talk, shall we say, or walk the talk. I'm one of UK's leading deal traders, so I source well in excess of 500 properties every year. So I founded the Property Investor app, which is the UK's first property investment platform, which showcases all kinds of deals all over the UK. I write for two very well-known property publications in the UK, one of them being Your Property Network, and the other being the HMO magazine. And I also feature in magazines such as Blue Bricks, etc. And finally, in lockdown, the first lockdown, I released a podcast called The Property Rebel, and I release a new episode every Tuesday at 6 a.m. So if you like the thought of that, go and check us out. You can find us on all usual platforms like Spotify, Stitcher, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, and it's called The Property Rebel. Don't forget to subscribe. That would be much appreciated. Now, I'm going to tell you a bit of a story, and I told this story last week. I don't mind saying that because there's going to be a few similarities to what I said last week. And one of the similarities that I'm going to start with is that in property, sometimes there's not always people that believe in us. And I don't mind saying that. I've come from quite a strict Asian upbringing, and my father was very much one of these people that didn't want to release the realm of his property portfolio. So his background was that he was an engineer. So he used to manufacture parts for earth movers, forklifts, and he was very hands-on. And he took that approach onto his property portfolio. So um, from the profits of his engineering business, he then went on and bought some properties, and it was a handful of properties, and the properties was always almost like a side gig. When I say side gig, his first main priority was to make sure that the engineering company was fine. The property portfolio wasn't really well managed. Tenants were running into rent arrears. It had kind of management issues. People, it was a bit of a nightmare. And I don't mind saying that. And where it all began was from a point of view was where it all began was when I left university. I kind of my father said to me, he goes, Arsh, he goes, you're degree educated now. I'd really love for you to help get involved in the business. And my background, my degree was in international business management. And I actually thought that I was going to go off and do other things, but I decided to get involved in the family business because I wanted to actually see what we could do with this, how we could streamline it, because I already understood what the issues were. The issues were that we had lots of rent arrears. The issues were that we had problem tenants. The issues were that it was a management nightmare. And so I had to turn, and one of the challenges I had was how to turn a failing business into a successful business. And, 24 years later, I'm glad to say that I stand here now. I managed to do that. and I built a substantial business going forward. And if you wanted to know a bit of background about my childhood, here I am actually on screen as a 16-year-old launching my first ever business as a solo entrepreneur. But before that, up to the age of 5, I actually grew up in a HMO. So my parents, who were quite, let's say, savvy with their money, that only decided that we were a family of 8. So including my parents, we're a family of 8, and we all lived on the ground floor of a 5-bedroom house. And the reason why we only lived on the ground floor is because we needed to rent out the rooms upstairs in order to be able to afford the mortgage. So you could say that from the outset, I've only ever lived in a HMO. So I've only ever known what a HMO is. HMOs have only become trendy since 2008. Believe it or not, I knew what a HMO was in 1980, which was when I was born, and I was born in a HMO. So that's a little bit crazy. So let's get moving forward. So I'm going to be showing you what is considered the property investor roadmap. I kind of went through this last week, but I'm putting in new property examples because no one really talks about what I consider the roadmap, because really everyone starts out and they literally just get dumped into either deal sourcing or rent to rent, but no one actually thinks what the bigger picture is and what the progression is. And tonight's session, I actually want to take you through that progression. And this is the progression that I've actually been through in my property journey. And it's kind of dealt with me extremely well. And I've got to say that lots of you have put in the comments box that some of you are complete beginners, some of you are, looking to move forward. So Cole says, I've got 2 buy-to-lets, but I want to create more cash flow. And I get that because, having 2 buy-to-lets, yes, they're going to be generating some cash flow, but as a single let and as a buy-to-let, they're not going to be generating a great amount. So we need to start scaling up. And there's nothing wrong with being a beginner, because one thing I will say to you is that every expert was once a beginner. So it's about what you do to move yourself forward and how you progress yourself forward. So going back to this picture that you saw that you see on the right hand side, here I am, 16 years old, and if you have a look on my wrist, that's a watch that I was selling. So that's a watch that I was selling. So a friend of mine, when we were in 6th form, his uncle used to import watches from China. And one day, my friend said to me, because believe it or not, even though I wasn't allowed to, I kind of used to drive, and that's a different story. But anyway, my friend said to me, he goes, Arsh, my uncle's got these watches. He goes, how about we go off and sell these at markets? So some of the largest markets in the UK. So we went to Wembley, we did Donington, we did Ilfracombe, Willicombe, Bideford. You name it, we were there. Uttoxeter. So on the weekends, so we used to do school Monday to Friday. On the weekends, we used to do watches. We used to sell watches. But one thing that we didn't have any money to get started. So I had to think of a creative way to get started in business. And so what I said to my friend was that put me in contact with your uncle, because I think we can get started with very little capital. And what happened was that we negotiated what is considered a sale and rent back. So he would give us 500 watches. We would go out to the market. We would slog our guts off to try and see how many we could sell. At the end of the day, we would then pay him for whatever watches we sold, and we would hand him back the watches that we hadn't. Obviously, he was charging us a little bit more than what he was charging everyone else, because he had this risk of us taking his stock. But this was me starting out on my entrepreneurial journey, and we really enjoyed it. And this is what really gave me my first kind of hunger to make money. So when everyone starts out in property, or I will say the most natural strategy to start with is deal sourcing. So obviously, when you get involved in property, depending on where you are, some people may come into property with money. Some people may not have funds to get involved. And believe it or not, both actual avenues are okay. If you've got funds, you may want to go off and purchase a property, and you may want to start your journey. If you haven't got funds, then we need to figure out ways that we can create funds. Now, regardless, both of you need to understand What kind of property are you looking for? And that ultimately comes down to sourcing and how you're going to find your first property. So if you've got funds, you're going to want to try and find the best property. You may want to start looking for below market value deals. You may want to start looking for like a mini HMO, or what's going to provide you with the best return, or make your money work really hard. If you haven't got funds, you're going to be looking for the style of properties that are going to allow you to find, going to be a great deal for an investor on your database, and you're going to sell that deal to your investor. So with deal sourcing, deal trading, deal packaging, believe it or not, they're all the same thing. They're all the same terminology. I like to call it deal sourcing or deal trading. Other people may call it packaging, and there's no real difference. So there's three parts included in this. So you've got the vendor, the person that actually owns the property, or the estate agent who is introducing you to the property. You then got the sourcer, which is, believe it or not, you. And the reason why I say that is because you're going to be the person that packages this deal up and then tries to put a spin on it and then sell it on to the person in the jigsaw, which is the purchaser. They're the person that's going to look at it and think, oh, I actually like the look of that. I like the thought of that. Yes, I'm going to buy it. So pretty much, if you think about this, everything I'm going to say to you today, believe it or not, is not a new strategy. I don't mind saying that. And the reason why I say that is because if you think about it, you've got a vendor, you've got a person selling a property, you got on the other side, you've got someone buying it, and then you've got someone in the middle facilitating the sale. Now, ultimately, previously, this would have been the estate agent. The vendor goes to the estate agent either lists it in their window and then puts it on Rightmove, and then ultimately the buyer comes in and tries to buy the property. Now, in that scenario, the estate agent would have made their money by selling the property and charging the seller. Now, ultimately, when you're deal sourcing or deal trading, I don't know who came up with this rule, by the way, but ultimately what happens is that instead of charging the seller, we actually charge the buyer, the person purchasing the property. So that's kind of the fundamentals between an estate agent and a deal sourcer. Estate agent charges the seller, and the deal sourcer charges the buyer. Now, for those that are very switched on, they would have very quickly noticed that there could be some synergy with the estate agent and the deal sourcer, because if the estate agent is charging the seller and the deal sourcer is charging the buyer, why don't the estate agent and the sourcers actually kind of work together? And the reason why I say that is because with an estate agent, their first goal or their first priority is to sell the property. If they don't sell the property, they don't generate any fees, because the estate agent only generates fees and commission when the property is sold. So no sales means that, first of all, they're going to have a very frustrated vendor. Now, don't know about you, but at some point, either now or in the past, you probably tried to sell a property and you probably put it on with an estate agent. So when you put it on, you get a flurry of kind of inquiries, then you probably get some viewings, and then you may either get some offers, whether they be low or, some, if you're lucky enough, you may have sold. But for the others, they then start to fizzle out. The longer the property sits on the market, the less inquiries you get. And this is kind of a common theme. And ultimately, the longer it's there, the more frustrated the vendor gets, because the vendor will also be looking at what else has happened in the local area. Which other agents are operating? Which agents are active? Because let's just imagine you're on with Connells, but down the road, let's say Reeds Rains, they've sold one for near enough the same kind of money for the same kind of property. You're thinking, well, why did I go with Connells where Reeds Rains seem to be a little bit more proactive? You may be tied into a contract over here with Connells, but ultimately you want to sell your property. So you're going to end up joining or moving agency to Reeds Rains. Now, ultimately, that is a loss of income. That is a loss of, that is ultimately a lot of energy that's gone into a property with no gain for Connells who have not sold the property. Now, from the agent, like I said, they've invested time. They've actually invested funds in marketing the property. So whether it be in the newspaper, whether sticking it online, whether organizing a photographer, getting EPCs done, all that kind of stuff in order to get the property sale ready. So they've invested time in it. So they really want to see some form of commission for selling the property. And if they don't lose it, if they don't generate a sale, they fear losing the listing and also another local agent coming in. So that's one of the biggest things, because as you can imagine, if you had Connells there that tried to sell it for the last 6 months, that all of a sudden they get de-instructed, Reed's Reigns comes in, within the space of 2 months, they sell it. What is that saying to the rest of the area? That Reed's Reigns is the better agent to be with. And that sold, all the agents really care about is having that sold sticker, that sold banner on their boards, because what that is showing to people in the area is, believe it or not, they can sell stock. So I always put this up, and this is kind of a common question that I ask. Have a look at the list that's on the screen. And again, if you can, just let's get a little bit interactive with this. So which one of these is a deal? So is it buying something below market value? Is it buying a property in need of renovation? Is it a property that's already income producing? Is it a property producing a good return on investment? Is it something that has a good potential capital growth? Is it something that can be sustainable, something that can benefit from capital appreciation, somewhere where you can add value, something that needs refurbing, something that needs that you could generate from planning gain, or something where you have the opportunity to take control with little capital, or the opportunity to use someone else's asset in exchange of time? So out of all those, which ones would you see, or which would you believe is a deal? So again, stick it in the comments box, because there's no right or wrong answer here. And the reason why I say that is because, believe it or not, as far as I'm concerned, all of them are a deal. Because let's just think about all the people that are on this session right now. All you guys have all got your own form of investing criteria, whether you're buying property, whether you're sourcing property. It doesn't matter, because when you eventually come to buy a property, you're going to have in your own mind a style of property that you want in a certain location, generating a certain amount of income. So let's just imagine Mark, who's on the session. First of all, thanks for being here, Mark. Mark may want to buy a property that is, let's say, 15% below market value, but is happy to take something that will generate circa £500 a month. Now, we may have Cole, who is actually, in actual fact, only after 30% plus below market value deals, because his angle is that he wants to trade it, he wants to buy it, he wants to either refurb it, and he wants to put it back out on the open market. So he wants to sell it. So you've got two different people with two different angles. Now, if you multiply that against all the different people that you've got in your database, there's no right or wrong answer. And the reason why I say that is because I attended an auction this week, and it was an online auction that had in excess of 200 lots for sale. Now, if you thought that, in that auction there must have been thousands of people bidding because it was online, it had a worldwide presence. Can you imagine that if an auction company only sold two-bedroom terrace properties, how many people would they be missing out on? No, but an auction company, they have to offer a variety of properties to meet a variety of different people's criteria, and also lots of different properties in lots of different price categories. So, properties starting from £1, properties going right up to millions of pounds, different locations, London, Grimsby, Scotland, Bournemouth, you name it, because again, they've got to meet the criteria of all these people. When you walk past an estate agent's window, they're not just going to have all one-bedroom flats. They're going to have one-bed flats, two-bedroom terrace, three-bedroom terrace, three-bedroom semi-detached, four-bed detached, five-bed detached. Because again, different people want to live in different style of properties, whether they're going to be living in a flat that wants to upgrade to a two-bedroom terrace, whatever it may be. So again, you need to factor in when you're sourcing from the outset that don't just get stuck into this trick of being a one-trick pony. One-trick pony, I'm only going to find below market value deals. Because if your database actually wants you to find other stock, you've got to be a little bit more proactive. So I just did a quick flick through, believe it or not, Rightmove today, and I looked at the area of Hull, and I actually thought that in actual fact, let's see how many properties there are available in Hull. And I actually used the keyword as a HMO. So let's just have a quick look at how many properties there were here. So you can see there's so many different properties. There were approximately 30 properties per agent, and there were approximately 20 agents within the area. And so that alone gives you around 600 properties. Now, I'm not going to say that all these are all available and all a deal, but this was literally just a very quick search that I did. And this was just one property type, one strategy, and one property platform with many others to explore. Now, why am I showing you this? I'm showing you this very simply is because some people think that there's a oversaturation of deal sources, but believe it or not, I disagree. Because when you think of how many different properties there are in the UK, how many different agents there are in the UK, so we've got 12 core cities, we've got 24 other cities, we've got 119 large towns, we've got 270 medium towns, 674 small towns, and 116 villages and small communities. So we just looked at one there, and you've got to remember that the stock is consistently rotating. Going back to my example of auction companies. Now, an auction company that happened this week, they've now got to go out and find another 200 lots for the next auction, which is going to happen next month or within the next 6 weeks. Now, if they didn't think that there was a demand there, would they be able to run a business? No. But if you have a think that last year, they and all throughout, they've been running auctions, which has got 200 lots consistently every 6 weeks. And the same thing happens to them. They're doing exactly the same with what you're doing. Now, ultimately, if you start to become really good at this, there's no reason for you not to be able to do it. And the reason why I say that is because, believe it or not, this is all risk-free property investing. Sounds really random. And the reason why I say risk-free is because you're not buying anything. Going back to my example with Connells, when Connells turned up to your house and they offered to sell your property and put your property on the open market, did they guarantee that your property was going to sell? And the answer has to be no. And there has to be no because they can't guarantee that. If they could guarantee that, there would be no property for sale on the open market because everything would be sold because they'd guaranteed that it would have to sell. So ultimately, it has been sold. They can't guarantee that they can sell it. And if they don't sell it, what they have to do, you'll see that they would come back and try and renegotiate on the price. So you sometimes see that the property has been reduced in price. This is because the agent's gone back to them and tried to renegotiate on price. So if you've got any questions, guys, please feel free to stick them in the Q&A box, and I will be going through these as we get along. Now, as a deal sourcer, from a personal point of view, I love it because I get to see all the best deals. And the reason why I say that is because if I'm looking for specific style of criteria in property, I get to see lots of properties come to me, lots of agents approach me, lots of other vendors approach me. And then when they come to me, I think, oh, actually, I like that. I'm going to buy that myself. And I've done that multiple times. So when you've got the property in front of you, you decide, are you going to purchase the property for yourself? As again, going back onto the point, if you've got funds and you have the ability, you've got a JV partner, you've got funds in place, you can buy the property yourself. Or you can sell the deal on to another investor. But either way, the plan is to monetize every lead. Now, I'll quickly talk to you about this guy called Jay. So Jay Uday he had no property experience, no money to invest, and he was a full-time teacher. And he decided that he wanted to get involved in property. And as a result, he came to spend the day with me in my office. And within that day, I turned him into deal sourcer. And he actually negotiated 2 HMOs, which were actually on the open market with agents. And we negotiated a great price. We actually sourced and packaged the deals and offered them out to my investors. So I've got a database of over 100,000 property investors. And we sold them instantly. And we made £10,000 in sourcing fees, literally within the day. So I turned Jay into what I consider a yes machine. He just needed to follow the process and the system. And off the back of that, he's then gone on to sell multiple different deals. So when we talk about deal sourcing, I could talk to you about all kinds of deals all week, all year, because if you have a look on the Property Investor app, we've actually got a number of different deals across the country. So whether you're in the north, the south, the east, the west, the Midlands, we deal with properties all over the country. Going back to my scenario, We've got on the Property Investor app 50,000 users. We need to make sure that we service all 50,000 users. Not all 50,000 users want to buy properties in the West Midlands. So maybe a handful of those want to buy in the West Midlands. We need to be able to sell properties to them all over the country. And that kind of tells you what we've been talking about throughout the session. So deal sourcing is a really lucrative and great way to start in your property journey, even if you're looking to buy. Now, for those that start off with deal sourcing, they generally then, once they've started building up a pipeline of deals, they then start to go into things like rent to rent or lease options. Now, I understand that, Cole, you mentioned that you're looking to get more interest in lease options or rent to rent and increase his cash flow to £5,000 a month. Believe it or not, it's so possible. And the reason why I say that is because if you do one deal a month as a deal sourcer, that's going to generate you circa £3,000 a month. That's just sort of one deal. Now, if you become a rent to rent operator, again, each property circa around £1,000 a month. I'll tell you about two properties that I've done this week alone. So this week, well, tail end of last week, I got approached by when I say I got approached, I saw a post, believe it or not, on Facebook. And it was a guy saying that, guys, I've got these two HMOs. I've got a managing agent, but who's really difficult, not paying them any money, not really looking after properties. And I agreed. I literally instantly messaged him and said, guys, okay, tell me where the properties are. Might be interested. And he goes, we've got one in Dudley, we've got one in Birmingham. The one in Dudley is literally on the same road that I've already got a property. And I said to him, right, I've already got one on this street. I can manage. Well, when I say I can manage it, I'm not a managing agent. I want to lease a property off him. And we did a deal literally over Facebook Messenger where I took them off him on a 5-year lease. No deposit was paid. We got a 1 month rent-free period because there's some works that need to be done to a property. And they continue to ensure and maintain the structure. So this week I collected the keys. For those that follow me on social media, you would have seen that I did the the jangling of the keys. I've been there. I've introduced myself. And one of the key things about this is that they're fully tenanted. Both HMOs are fully tenanted. So it's not like I'm taking on, empty properties and they're going to start costing me money. These are actually generating income from the outset. And these are the greatest kind of deals. The second one here is a 5-year lease, Birmingham City Centre, just on the outskirts of Birmingham City Centre in an area called Erdington, for those that know it. And again, these are going to generate circa £1,000 per month cash flow each. And all because I was being due diligent. And when I saw the opportunity, I went and approached, put myself forward, and we did the deal. No marketing costs required whatsoever. You could say that was that luck? No, it's not, because we do stuff like this consistently. We're consistent because these are the ways that we kind of source properties. We look for motivated vendors. We look for motivated owners who have got problems. And off the back of that, we provide solutions. So as a deal sourcer, I use my skills to source a deal, which now then took me on to stage 2 to acquire rent-to-rent properties. And I've got a decent size, circa 40 rent-to-rent properties. And if each of them is circa, like, again, producing anywhere between £800 to £1,000 plus cash flow, some of them are producing £2,000 to £3,000 a month cash flow. If you were on the session last week, I showed you ones that are actually producing in excess of £7,000 to £10,000 a month cash flow. So really, it all depends on you. But you, as a rent-to-rent operator, will then start to generate funds. Now, if you follow the roadmap, you'll see that we start to then become a little bit more of, let's say, a sophisticated investor, because we've learned the tricks of deal sourcing. We've learned now that by utilizing our deal sourcing tricks, we can now start to acquire properties for our own portfolio. And we do that through the rent to rent or the lease options. Now, from the cash flow that you're generating from these, from steps number 1 and 2, you may then start to build up a deposit towards step number 3, which is actually a HMO. And you may think, well, in actual fact, yes, I understand HMOs. I like what they do. I like the cash flow that they bring. I'm going to go off and acquire a HMO. And I talked to you last week about a number of different HMOs that I already own. I'll talk to you about this one. Again, I've had this one in my portfolio quite a few years, and believe it or not, it's an absolute cash cow. Now, as a deal sourcer, you can actually source lots of HMOs because they're still really popular in the industry for property investors. And you can also source properties which are perfect to become a HMO. So it doesn't necessarily need to be a property that's already income generating and already a HMO. It's ideal. Well, you've got to remember, you've got two different types of investors. You've got one that won't be able to have the time and the funds to do the work, and then you may have ones that will be able to have the time to do work. So you've got to satisfy both of them. So here's a mid-terrace property that I bought. This, like I said, it's a while ago. And remember, it's not the most prettiest thing to look at. It's not in the most prettiest of locations. I don't mind saying that again. I bought it as a mid-terrace house for £80,000. I converted it into a four-bed HMO, which cost me approximately £20,000. It now generates circa £26,400 per annum. Each room is rented out at circa £550 per month. Based on that, we had a new commercial valuation based at around £200,000, which allowed me to go out and pull my money back out and go again and again and again. And it produced a cash flow of around £1,600 a month. I did some really cool things to this HMO where they've all got their own electricity meters, they've all got their own little en suites, mini kitchenettes. So they are pretty much like mini studios. But I've managed to refinance, get all my money out, and go again and again and again. Okay, so yeah, so Mark says, how was the property in Bushbury moved on to commercial mortgage? Because as I just said, each one's got its own electricity meter. So each one's got its own ensuite. So it can no longer be compared against any of the properties either side of it because the properties either side of it don't have five electricity meters. The property either side of it does not have five bathrooms. Property either side of it doesn't actually have five kitchens. So it's not apples for apples. Does that make sense? So I try and do this in a very clear manner so that there's no way that they can only be valued on a bricks and mortar value. So I talked about this last week. This was a HMO in Wolverhampton. There's two properties next door to each other. They were being sold as a pair. It's actually a nunnery when I bought it. So there were been it was a group of nuns that lived there and bought it from the Church of England. Originally, the estate agent wanted £400,000 for it, and I refused. I said it wasn't too for me; it was too much money. They actually came back to me 12 months later, having had a numerous deals fall through or numerous sales fall through, and I actually bought them for 235,000. And I then went off and got planning permission granted, one for a 9-bed, one for a 7-bed, and they're now combined a 16-bed HMO, which generates circa 77,000. We're due to increase that, and I reckon by the end of the year it'll hit circa the best part of 90 to £95,000. And the current cash flow is around £4,000 per month. Now, I'm not saying this to boast. What I am saying is that if you actually have the right mindset and you have the right mindset of looking at what kind of properties to look for by deal sourcing and then having the funds to execute the purchase, there's no reason why you can't all do deals like this. Whether you got the funds to purchase or whether you got the ability to take them on a rent-to-rent basis. That's exactly what we're looking for here. Now, if anyone's ever read my book, I don't mind saying it's called Boom Bust and Back Again, available on Amazon. That wasn't meant to be a plug, but I may as well run with it whilst we're here. I purchased this property, believe it or not, back in 2006. And 2006, it was being rented as almost like a care home. It was rented to a care home for on a 10-year lease, and 2 years later, they went bust. I was then put in a very difficult position where I was either being told we've either got to let the property get repossessed because the mortgage payments were circa £5,000 a month without it generating any income, or we could try and do something with it. So I converted it, believe it or not, into a 23-bed HMO. And it now generates in excess of £140,000 per annum. There's a whole story that goes behind this, but we haven't got time to cover all that. But it's 23 bedrooms. It's since 2007, or sorry, since 2009. So we bought it in 2006. We ran it for 2 years as a care home, or we leased it to a care home. In 2008, then went bust. 2009, I actually converted it into a 23-bed HMO. And as a result, since 2009, it's produced 120 to 140,000 pound a year ever since. And it's probably one of the greatest, when I say the greatest things that I did, my business partner didn't want to carry on with this property, and he actually wanted the property to be repossessed, but I refused to let that go because I thought there was a greater product to be had there, and I'm really glad that we did. So it generates a lot of cash and a lot of cash flow for our business. Now, moving on. So when you start buying a few HMOs and you start building up some cash flow, I don't know if you're anything like me, sometimes tenants will then start to grind on you because they'll be calling you all times of the day, and they'll want to ask all kinds of questions. I had a call today, believe it or not, from a tenant who locked himself out, who seemed a little intoxicated. So I had to get someone to go and open up for him. But that's part and parcel of being a landlord. So moving forward, we then start buying properties to either do as a refurbishment, or whether you decide to refurb it and keep it and refinance it, whether you just decide to do a refurbishment and sell it on to generate a capital gain. Here's a property in, believe it or not, in Dudley. Another property in Dudley. So if you notice, a lot of the properties that I'm talking about today are all West Midlands based. If you were on last week's session, I talked about properties in Manchester. I talked about properties in Nottingham. I talked about properties in Liverpool. I talked about properties in Cornwall. Believe it or not, straight after this session, I'm actually heading down to my property in Cornwall, where I'm going to spend the week down there because we seem to have some decent weather. So I'm going to go and spend the week down in my second home in Cornwall. And again, that is on a lease option property. So therefore, I've got a 10-year lease option on the property in Cornwall. And, it's a phenomenal deal, but I would not have come across that if I did not know how to deal source. So here's a development opportunity in Dudley where I found the owner by utilizing land registry details. And I said to them, so it's not only the piece of land, but it's actually the shell. And it's been sat empty for 20 odd years. And I said, what's the story behind it? They said, we don't have the funds. We don't have the funds to do the work to the property. So we negotiated a deal with the owner. And we said that we'd agree 80,000 for the plot. Off the back of that, anything in excess of 80,000. So if they would allow us the time to go off and do some work and, restructure the deal, anything in excess of 80,000, we would do on a 50-50 split fee basis with the owner. We sold that deal 4 weeks later for £120,000. Now, there are some things that we had to do in the background. But off the back of that, we sold it for 120,000, which meant that out of the 120,000, the first 80 went to the owner. Now the other 40, we had to do a split. So they got 20,000. So in actual fact, they generated 100,000 for the property. And we generated 20,000 from a property where it didn't cost us anything to get involved. Now, this is a property that I've done this week. So this is a property in Wolverhampton. Now, this is on a road called Wellington Road. And believe it or not, it's this actual site here. It's an actual site there. And we've agreed with the vendor, very similar scenario, where he wants 300,000 for it. No purchase is required, which means that I'm not going to put any funds into the actual transaction. And anything over 300,000, we would do a percentage split with the owner. The deal's still in progress, which means that we've still got people looking at this. But I reckon that we could potentially sell this for circa 350 to 370,000, which means that if you work on a 50-50 split fee basis, based on the fact that there's going to be between a 50 and a 70,000 pound gain, I could be walking away anywhere between 25 to 35,000 pounds, and it's going to take me approximately 6 weeks to do that. And the plan would be to get planning permission on site or some form of preliminary position to sell the site. And then, like I said, no capital required to get involved. I've literally facilitated the transaction between the buyer and the seller, and we move forward. So finally, after we've done all that, we're going to see ourselves as being a bit of an expert. Sorry, I'm being blinded by the sun here, as you can see. We're then going to start moving on to larger developments, and this is the kind of stage that's where I am right now. So last week, I kind of went through this property. It's a block of offices in Wolverhampton that I acquired initially on a lease option basis, on a 3-year lease option basis. When I agreed the deal from the outset, I think it was in November 22, I negotiated the deal with the owner where we purchased the property at 520 on a 3-year option. We've actually just in the process of completing on the option, and we have actually had this valued based on its new income of 124,000. So when I took this property on, it was only actually generating £40,000 a year. As a result, I took this property on. I utilized my skill to be able to increase the increase the income on this asset. And as a result, I've had it now revalued at £1.2 million. And we're now going through the basis of completing on that option. So there's lots of uplift in this property. Now, I've done a similar deal. I'm going to quickly move because I'm being blinded. No, that doesn't work either. Just to let you know, these webinars are live, as you can tell. So here's another property in Wolverhampton where I found actually through an estate agent, and they hadn't sold it for almost like 6 months. And I said to the agents, guys, and this was a commercial property. I said to them, guys, let's actually do something with this because it's sat there empty. And I said, let me get in contact or put me in contact with the owner, or let's have a meeting with the owner. And once I met with the owner, I actually negotiated a deal where he actually handed his property over to me for the full value of £1.5 million. Sounds a bit crazy, but believe it or not, he was a little bit apprehensive when we talked about this. But believe it or not, I went off and got planning permission in place to convert it to 28 1 and 2 bedroom flats, a 20-bed hotel, and 6 commercial units on the ground floor. And that's going to generate circa around £650,000 per year in rental income. And we believe the commercial valuation will be within the region of £6.5 to £7 million. Now, to build that out, it's going to cost approximately £2 million. So if you work on the basis that my acquisition cost is 1.5 plus the £2 million commercial build cost, based on an income of 650,000, it's going to generate a commercial valuation of £6.5 to £7 million, which is going to be around 50% of the GDV. So if you were to go through all these deals that we've been through this evening, which one kind of takes your fancy the best? Because believe it or not, there's no right or wrong. Some of you may look at this and think, you know what, I wouldn't want to do that deal. Why would I want to build out 28 one-bedroom apartments? Or why would I want to do this? Or why would I want to buy rent to rent? Why would I not just continue trading property and utilize other people's assets and not actually get any of my money tied up at all? There's no right or wrong answer here, by the way, guys. I don't mind saying that. It all depends on you and your appetite of risk. When it comes to deal sourcing, there's no money trading hands. When I say no money, no, you're not physically putting any money into the deal. So ultimately, yeah, it's completely risk-free. When you do deals like this, you will probably have to put some collateral in place, or when I say some guarantees in place, but there's nothing wrong with doing that. Now, a property that is currently going through that I've got, we've done a deal on a grade 2 listed building where it's got planning permission for 95 apartments. This is a deal where, believe it or not, it's not actually cost me anything to get involved in this deal. And we believe the gross development value of it is going to be circa around £20 million. Now, again, like I said, these are larger deals. You've got to have the appetite, you've got to have the skill, you've got to have the experience to do that. But by going through the roadmap, you will get to this point where everyone will want to do the larger deals. Now, you could ultimately, you might turn around and say, well, Arsh, I never want to get to this point. Why do I want to do deals of this size, of this nature, with this level of risk? And I get that. But ultimately, I've gone through stages 1, 2, and 3, and 4. 24 years later, I'm in a position where I think these are actually really risk-free, depending on how you structure it. Does everyone agree with me when I say that? Again, just give me a quick yes or no. Now, kind of what I'm going to talk to you about this evening is the Elite Property Tribe, because what the Elite Property Tribe, what I've created is in actual fact a coaching program which takes your business from where it is now to where you want it to be. Because believe it or not, I've actually been through the whole process. So I created 52 modules of an online training program called the Elite Property Tribe. And what makes me different to anyone else out there is that I don't just give you the theory, but I also give practical, real life case studies. Now, let me give you an example of that. This week, well, first of all, the sun is absolutely blinding me. So I'm going to quickly move over. There we go. So this week alone, I actually did a training session with a lady called Deanne, and she's completely new to property. And what she wanted was someone to give her a real hand-holding approach. And I said on the one-to-one session, we went through everything that she thought she would need to move her forward onto the next stage. And by the end of the session, she was actually chanting, saying, I can't believe it, Arsh. She goes, we've gone through it step by step, and there's no reason why I can't do this now. And the reason why is because I want to make sure that I take through everyone. It's very much a hand-holding process where I show you exactly what to do, how to do it, so that you progress on to the next step. And I've created a network of like-minded property professionals to support and encourage. And as I said, this is not mentoring, it is business coaching. And the reason why I want to convert it into business coaching is because bi-monthly, we're going to have one-to-one phone or Zoom sessions where you and I are going to deep dive into your business. It's very much about you and your business. And we're going to set up some action plans and audits to make you accountable. And like I said, it's about you and your business working on exactly what you need to thrive. So you telling me where you are right now, telling me where you want to be, and us creating a personal step-by-step plan to get you there. And within that, we're going to have some accountability action points. You're going to have a supportive, personalized approach. You're going to have an expert in your corner, i.e. me, who has the experience and the correct contacts to get you to where you want to be. So the 52 modules of online training, what they do, they give you an actual in-depth explanation of the 5 cash flow strategies. So the same that we've just gone through on the roadmap. So whether it be deal sourcing, whether it be rent to rent, whether it be HMOs, new refurbishment, or larger developments, we're going to aim to take you through the whole process. And I want to make sure that you get through so that you're making money every step during the process. Now, if you're interested, this is what I'll need from you. So first of all, I don't just want to work with someone that's going to start today and finish tomorrow. I want to be in a position where you're going to be committed to it, which means that you need to show up. You need to show up and you need to have the right can-do attitude. You've got to be dedicated. You've got to give me dedicated time in your week to make this work so that you can move forward, because there are going to be things that I'm going to ask you to do. There's going to be certain research that I ask you to undertake. And you're going to have an open mindset, because ultimately there are going to be things that I ask you to do that you may feel slightly uncomfortable with. But believe it or not, there will be method to the madness. And you've got to want the ability to want to grow and develop your business. So if you're in a position where you're thinking, well, believe it or not, yes, okay, I've got to this certain level, but I want to go here, I want to go here, I want to go here. Or if you're actually just starting out, you're thinking, I want someone with me every step of the way so that I don't get it wrong. So don't make the mistakes. And I want you to be with me so that if I've got something that I need to ask, I've got someone that I can pick up the phone to. And that's what a business coach will do. Someone that you will have by your side. So you can pick up the phone, you can book a call, and you can say, Arsh, okay, I'm looking at this property. What do you think of this? What can we do? How can we do this? Or what are the questions I should be asking? So just a quick recap of what the Elite Property Tribe is. So first and foremost, I'd be asking you to go and watch the modules of the online training, which covers all the different aspects of property strategies. Off the back of that, you'll then come back to me and say, oh, okay, this is what I understand, or this is what I don't understand. If there's any gaps, we're going to go through what those gaps are. so that we can make sure that I've got you in the right frame of mind and asking the right questions so that when you do come across an opportunity, we can pounce on it straight away. So I'm going to be the expert working alongside you in your business so that if you have an issue or you want me to listen in on some of your calls or you want me to follow up with some of your calls in the background, that's exactly what I'm going to be doing. We're going to have access to all 400 hours plus of previous sessions. So there's never going to be a shortage of material for you to watch. There's never going to be a shortage of things for you to go and see and catch up on. You also have the ability to JV and sell your deals to my investor database. As I said throughout the session, I've got 100,000 people on my database. We've got 50,000 people in the property investor app. So these are people that you can sell your deals to. And plus, on top of that, you get access to my useful contacts. So you may contact me and say, Arsh, I need a mortgage broker that I can speak to, or I need a tax advisor, I need a solicitor. And these are all people that are already that I've used over a number of years that I know can deliver really good content and also help you through any issues that you may have. Finally, the Elite Property Tribe has their own personal and private WhatsApp group, which I'm in. So there are questions like every day people come up and ask questions, and we'll come back and we'll answer those. And then in the meanwhile, everyone in the tribe actually learns from that. Plus, you get access to all my contracts, templates, and spreadsheets. So everything, you've got the documentation, you've got the documentation, you've got the education, and more importantly, you've got the support. So just give me a quick, here's the platform. So you can see all the kind of things that we cover. So it's the 5 different strategies, the 5 different parts in the roadmap. We're going to be covering deal sourcing, rent to rent, HMO, mini refurbishment, and larger developments. So you can see all the different modules that we're going to be covering there. And these are these that you can go back and watch again and again and again and again. And if there's something that you don't understand, you come back to us and you say, okay, Arsh, this is what I need to know. So what's the price of it? Because I know that's what everyone's going to be asking. Well, the full price for the whole year is £5,000. So that can either be paid in one payment, where you get access to the whole program immediately, or if you fancy and you want to spread the payments over the year, I've got no issue with that. So you can spread it over 12 months, where it's £450. And the first 4 modules will be released immediately, and the others will be drip fed every week. Now, one thing that I ask in, I don't do all these things and say, guys, you have to run to the back of the room, or we've only got a certain amount of spaces. The one thing I want to say is that if you think that this is of interest to you, and again, please only book this call if you are interested in the Elite Property Tribe. The one thing I say is literally just book a strategy call. So when I say book a strategy call, literally, I'm going to put it in the chat, and I'm going to quickly, there we go. I'm going to put it in the chat. And then for those that want a little bit more information, I'm going to put that in the chat as well. And then if you like the thought of that, feel free, literally just to book a call so we can have a chat, just to make sure that we're the right fit. I only want to really work with people who I think are going to be the right fit, who've got the right mindset to move this forward. So if you like the thought of that, if you like the thought of having a coach in your corner who's going to be fighting by your side every step of the way, then let's make that happen. And if you want more free information, feel free to touch base. So you can either go to the info page, or you've got the pages where you can see what you're actually going to be getting. So are there any questions on anything that I've covered so far? Because now is the perfect opportunity for you to ask that question. So I know that during the week, we've had a couple of questions from some people that have come back to me on email saying, oh, okay, so what makes this program kind of different to any others? And the answer is, believe it or not, it's the accountability, and it's actually the hand holding. So when you go to another, let's say, education provider, and there's nothing wrong with the other education providers, whoever you may choose, but I'm the person that you're going to be speaking to consistently. So if you need to get hold of me, I'm going to be the person that you manage to speak to. When you go to other education providers, and I'm sure that some of you have been on other training, after the workshop, you can't seem to get hold of them. And I'm sure lots of you have probably been in that position. Whereas here, I'm going to be the person that you speak to. You book a call. We've got that call. We've got a very clear idea of when we're speaking and what we're speaking about, so that the calls are very targeted and focused on your business. So here's a few other people who joined the tribe and have been with me and have had some great success. So we've got Ashley Walker. He's done a number of different deals. And believe it or not, he's actually built his own property portfolio with none of his own money. So that's quite interesting. We've got Bav, who has actually just done rent-to-rent deals. He's completed and sold multiple rent-to-rent deals, again, all over the country. Now, Lenka has done multiple deals all over the country. So whether there be commercial deals, her first deal, believe it or not, actually was a lease option deal. So she joined over 3 years ago and she's still with us in the EPT today. And she keeps going because she keeps carrying on because she loves the support that their WhatsApp group provide her. Now, Ale is one of the guys who, believe it or not, sourced lots of deals, lots of rent-to-rent deals, but has never sold a single deal. He's only kept them for his own property portfolio. And again, that's absolutely fine. When I joined the mentorship program, I grew my property business from 7 properties, which was 37 rooms, to 17 properties, which is 94 rooms. Not only did I learn the strategies and techniques, but also learned to strengthen my confidence and belief that I can do it. So we move on. We've got Amanda, who has done multiple deals because, again, deals that she would not have been able to do without the hand holding of the Elite Property Tribe. And then finally, one of the guys that's probably done the most number of deals is a guy called Adam Ludlam. So he was already an experienced property investor, which I found quite interesting, but he wanted to level up because his property portfolio was just running away in the background, and it was kind of he said here, he goes, I was concerned that it would be pitched at a level below my current experience. It became apparent very quickly that the program Arsh worked at various levels to support all individuals and their differing needs. I've sourced and sold various deals, and as a result, my learnings on the program, I would have no reservations about recommending the program to action takers. So you've got to be an action taker. You've got to be in a position where you want to do this. And as an EPT member, you can use the leverage of the Property Investor app to negotiate deals with vendors and agents. So just as a recap, the Elite Property Tribe is a 52 module of online training covering all the different property strategies. You're going to have an expert working alongside you in your business. You're going to have access to all 400 hours of previous webinars, recordings, and live meets. You're going to be able to JV and sell your deals to my investor database. You're going to have access to all my useful contacts so that you're not going to have to face any issues of not knowing who to speak to. And you're going to be in the private WhatsApp group, and you're going to have access to all the contracts, templates, and spreadsheets. And if you like the thought of that, I've put the links in the Q&A and the chat session so that you can ask away. And if you want, you can book your call. But I'd rather you literally book your call so that we can have that chat to see what really, whether we're a great fit. And I want to understand where you are now and where we can take you to be within a space of 12 months. And finally, just a bit of a motivation. So some of you tomorrow will be going to work for someone else. And I want to put this out there and say that if you don't build your own dream, someone will hire you to build theirs. And that's exactly what you're doing by working for someone else. You're building out someone else's dream. Let's work on you building your dream. And for those that want to have a quick chat, you're more than welcome to call my office, which is 01902 773 and we can have a chat. And you've got my email address, which is on screen there. Feel free to touch base. So we've got a very personal approach when it comes to our training. I want to make sure that I'm the person that's delivering it to get you to the point where you want to be. Someone's just messaged me and said, can we put the link back up? Yes, there we go. So you've got the link. Are there any questions? Because I'm conscious that we've kept it pretty much to the T and on time this evening. If you've got any questions, please feel free to reach out. If you want to book that call and you want to speak about the Elite Property Tribe, please book that call. More importantly, if you like the thought of joining the Elite Property Tribe, let's have that chat. Or if you want to join straight away, get you access to those modules immediately. So on that note, guys, I wish you all to be safe, well, and happy. As always, any questions, feel free to reach out, and I look forward to speaking to you all very soon. Thank you, guys. Take care. Bye-bye. Good night.